Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Marcus, and today I need to share something with you that I've honestly been avoiding talking about for months. This story is about the night that almost ended my influencer career before it really began, but also led to the most incredible opportunity I never saw coming. And it all started with one email that I probably read 100 times before I could believe it was real. Picture this. It's a rainy Tuesday morning in Brooklyn, and I'm sitting in my tiny studio apartment that doubles as my content creation space. You know the setup. Ring light balanced on a stack of books, clothes rack in the corner serving as my entire wardrobe, and a desk that's seen better days, but somehow makes everything work. I'd been grinding for 3 years at this point, posting daily, engaging with every single comment, and watching my follower count climb slowly but steadily toward that magical 150K milestone. Then my phone buzzed with an email notification, and when I saw the sender, my heart literally stopped. Luxe Fashion House. Not just any brand, but the luxury fashion house that every influencer dreams of working with. Their flagship store on Fifth Avenue is like a temple to fashion, the kind of place where celebrities shop and where a single handbag costs more than most people's monthly salary. I remember my hands actually shaking as I opened that email. The subject line read, "Exclusive invitation, product launch event." And for a moment, I thought it had to be spam or some kind of mistake. But there it was, addressed specifically to me, Marcus Rivera, inviting me to their exclusive product launch event. The email was beautifully formatted, professional, and spoke about wanting to connect with authentic voices in the fashion space who represent the future of style. Reading those words felt like validation for every late night I'd spent editing videos, every rejection I'd received from other brands, every moment I'd questioned whether I was actually good enough to make it in this industry. This wasn't just an invitation to an event. This was my golden ticket. My chance to prove that a kid from Brooklyn who started with nothing could earn a seat at the table with fashion's elite. I must have screenshot that email 10 times and sent it to my mom, my best friend Jake, and honestly anyone who would listen. My mom's response was typical. "Mijo, I'm so proud of you, but don't let it go to your head." But inside, I was already planning how this could change everything. One successful partnership with Luxe could open doors I'd only dreamed about. The event was scheduled for the following Friday evening, and the dress code simply said cocktail attire. Those 2 words sent me into a planning frenzy that consumed my entire week. I wanted to look perfect, but I also wanted to stay true to my brand and what I represented: accessible fashion, personal style, and proving that you don't need unlimited money to look incredible. I spent hours in my closet, trying on different combinations, taking photos, asking my followers for opinions through Instagram stories. The pressure was intense because I knew this wasn't just about one night. This was about representing everything I'd built and showing that I belonged in that world. But here's what I didn't know then, what I couldn't have possibly prepared for. That email, that invitation, that moment of pure excitement was actually setting me up for the most humiliating experience of my life. And yet, somehow, it would also lead to meeting the most incredible person who would completely change my perspective on what success really means. That Tuesday morning, staring at that email in my tiny Brooklyn apartment, I thought I knew exactly what my future looked like. I thought I understood what making it meant, what success in this industry required, and how important it was to impress the right people. I was so naive, so hopeful, so completely unprepared for what was waiting for me at that Fifth Avenue flagship store. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, let me tell you about the week that followed, because the anticipation, the preparation, and the dreams I built around that single evening made what happened next so much more devastating. And yet, without that devastation, I never would have discovered something far more valuable than any brand partnership could ever offer. The week leading up to that event felt like the longest 7 days of my life. I couldn't focus on anything else. Not my regular content. Not my day job at the coffee shop. Nothing. Every spare moment was consumed by planning the perfect outfit that would represent who I was while respecting the prestige of the venue. I finally settled on my vintage blazer. This incredible piece I'd found at a thrift store in Soho 6 months earlier. The moment I saw it hanging there between a bunch of outdated suits, I knew it was special. It was perfectly tailored, probably from the 80s, with this subtle pinstripe that caught the light just right. I'd worn it in several posts, and my followers always went crazy for it in the comments. Paired with my best dark jeans and my lucky sneakers, those limited edition Jordans I'd saved up for 3 months to buy, I felt like the outfit perfectly captured my brand. It was elevated but accessible, stylish but authentic. Looking in the mirror that Friday afternoon, I felt confident, ready. like I was about to step into the next chapter of my life. The subway ride to Fifth Avenue felt surreal. I kept checking my reflection in the train windows, adjusting my blazer, making sure everything looked perfect. Other passengers probably thought I was crazy, but I didn't care. This was my moment, and I wanted to savor every second of it. Walking up to that flagship store was like approaching a palace. The building itself was intimidating. All glass and marble with these massive windows displaying clothes that looked more like art installations than things people actually wore. Security guards in expensive suits stood at the entrance, checking names against a list, and for a terrifying moment I worried my name wouldn't be there. But it was. The guard smiled, checked me off, and suddenly I was inside this incredible space that felt like stepping into another world. Crystal chandeliers hung from impossibly high ceilings, casting this warm, golden light over everything. The floors were polished marble that reflected the light, and everywhere I looked there were racks of clothing that probably cost more than my annual rent. The space was already buzzing with activity. Influencers I recognized from Instagram were posing near the new collection. Fashion editors in head-to-toe designer outfits were examining pieces with the intensity of art critics, and brand executives in perfectly tailored suits moved through the crowd like they owned the world, which, in a way, they did. I grabbed a champagne flute from a passing server and tried to blend in, but honestly, I felt like an imposter. Everyone seemed so polished, so effortlessly elegant, like they'd been born knowing how to navigate spaces like this. I pulled out my phone to capture some behind-the-scenes content, partly for my followers, but mostly to give my hands something to do. The first hour actually went better than I'd expected. I connected with a few other micro-influencers who seemed genuinely nice, took some great shots of the new collection, and even had a brief conversation with a fashion blogger I'd been following for years. She complimented my blazer and asked where I'd found it, and when I told her it was thrifted, she seemed genuinely impressed rather than judgmental. For those first 60 minutes, I felt like I belonged, like maybe I really had earned my place in this room, like all those years of grinding and building my audience had finally paid off. I was already mentally composing the Instagram post I'd share later, imagining the engagement it would get, picturing the brand partnerships that might follow. But then something shifted. It started subtly. A few sideways glances when I walked by certain groups, conversations that seemed to pause when I approached, whispers that stopped just a little too abruptly. At first I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid, that the champagne and nerves were making me imagine things. But the feeling kept growing, this creeping sense that something was wrong. The energy around me had definitely changed, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, evaluated, judged. My confidence started to crack, and suddenly that vintage blazer I'd felt so good about began to feel like a costume, like I was playing dress-up in a world where I didn't belong. That's when I saw her approaching. This woman in an immaculate designer dress with perfectly styled hair and the kind of confident stride that commanded attention. She had 2 security guards flanking her, and they were walking directly toward me with purpose that made my stomach drop. I knew, even before she opened her mouth, that my perfect evening was about to become a nightmare. The woman approaching me moved with the kind of authority that made everyone in her path automatically step aside. I later learned her name was Victoria Sterling, head of marketing for Luxe Fashion House. But in that moment she was just this intimidating figure in a pristine white dress that probably cost more than my car, flanked by 2 security guards who looked like they meant business. My heart started pounding as they got closer. I tried to tell myself this was probably routine. Maybe they were just checking on all the influencers, making sure everyone was having a good time. But the expression on Victoria's face told a completely different story. Her eyes were cold, calculating, like she was sizing up a problem that needed to be solved. When she finally reached me, the conversations around us seemed to naturally quiet down. It was like people could sense drama brewing and wanted to position themselves to witness whatever was about to unfold. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like I was standing under a spotlight in front of an audience I hadn't asked for. "Excuse me," Victoria said, her voice carrying just far enough for nearby guests to hear clearly. "But I need to address your attire situation." Those words hit me like a physical blow. My mouth went dry, and I felt my face start to burn with embarrassment. The champagne flute in my hand suddenly felt impossibly heavy, and I had to concentrate to keep from dropping it. Around us, I could see other guests turning to look, their conversations trailing off as they realized something was happening. "I'm sorry, is there a problem?" I managed to ask, though my voice came out smaller than I'd intended. I was hoping, praying, that this was some kind of misunderstanding, that maybe she had me confused with someone else. But Victoria's response crushed that hope immediately. Her voice grew louder, more theatrical, like she was performing for the growing audience around us. "This is a luxury brand event, not a street fair. Your outfit is completely inappropriate and frankly disrespectful to our brand image." The humiliation was instant and overwhelming. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me, like everyone in that beautiful space was suddenly staring at me and finding me lacking. Victoria gestured at my sneakers like they were covered in mud, her face twisted in disgust. "These shoes are completely unacceptable for an event of this caliber." She didn't stop there. Her criticism expanded to my jeans, which she called juvenile and unprofessional, and even my beloved vintage blazer, which she dismissed as obviously second-hand and inappropriate for a luxury setting. Each word felt like a slap, and I could feel my carefully constructed confidence crumbling with every syllable. The worst part wasn't even what she was saying. It was how public she was making it. Other guests were now openly watching, some holding up their phones to record the spectacle. I could see fashion bloggers I'd admired from afar whispering to each other, their expressions ranging from sympathy to secondhand embarrassment to what looked like relief that they weren't the ones being humiliated. "Perhaps you misunderstood the dress code," Victoria continued, her voice dripping with condescension. "This is a sophisticated gathering for industry professionals, not a casual meetup. Your presence here reflects poorly on our brand, and frankly makes our other guests uncomfortable." I wanted to defend myself, to explain that my outfit was carefully chosen, that it represented my authentic style and my brand values. I wanted to tell her that my followers loved this blazer, that I'd built my entire platform on the idea that style doesn't require unlimited money, that authenticity matters more than price tags. But the words wouldn't come. I was frozen, paralyzed by the public nature of this dressing down and the growing crowd of witnesses. The security guards hadn't said anything, but their presence made the threat implicit. Victoria wasn't just criticizing my outfit. She was suggesting I didn't belong here at all. "I think it would be best if you considered leaving," she said, her words carrying across the now silent space around us. "Perhaps you can return to future events when you better understand the appropriate attire for such occasions." The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, waiting to see how I would respond, whether I would fight back or simply slink away in shame. My hands were shaking, and I felt tears threatening at the corners of my eyes. This was supposed to be my big break, my moment to prove I belonged in this world, and instead it had become the most humiliating experience of my professional life. I kept thinking about all the people who believed in me, my mom, my followers, everyone who had supported my journey to this point. How could I face them after this? How could I post about this event when it had gone so spectacularly wrong? The content I'd planned to create felt impossible now, tainted by this public rejection. But just as I was gathering the courage to respond, to either defend myself or accept defeat and leave with whatever dignity I had left, something unexpected happened. A voice cut through the tension, clear and confident, and completely surprising. "Actually, I think his outfit is perfect." Everyone turned to see who had dared to interrupt Victoria Sterling's public execution of my fashion choices, and what I saw changed everything about that night and ultimately about my entire career. The voice belonged to a young woman who couldn't have been much older than me, standing near the edge of our growing circle of spectators. She was wearing a simple black dress that looked elegant but not ostentatious, and she was holding a clipboard against her chest like a shield. Everything about her screamed intern or junior employee, which made her decision to speak up even more shocking. I watched as every head in our vicinity turned toward her, including Victoria's, whose face immediately flushed red with anger. The woman, I later learned her name was Jamie Chen, took a step forward, and I could see her hands trembling slightly, but her voice remained steady and clear. "Marcus represents exactly what our brand should be embracing," Jamie continued, and hearing my name spoken with such conviction by a complete stranger sent chills down my spine. Authentic style, creative expression, and proving that fashion is about confidence, not price tags. His content consistently shows how to make fashion accessible, which is what real influence looks like. The boldness of her statement sent ripples through the crowd. I could see other guests exchanging glances, some nodding in agreement, others looking uncomfortable with the confrontation unfolding before them. But Jamie wasn't finished, and what she said next made my heart race with a mixture of gratitude and terror for what she was risking. His vintage blazer tells a story about sustainability and creativity. His sneakers represent the intersection of streetwear and high fashion that brands are desperately trying to capture. This outfit is more authentic and influential than half the designer pieces in this room that will be forgotten by next season. Victoria's face had gone from red to nearly purple. "This is highly inappropriate, Jamie," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You're an intern, and you're completely out of line. This is not your place to comment on brand strategy or guest appropriateness." But Jamie didn't back down, and watching her stand her ground gave me strength I didn't know I had. "With respect, ma'am, excluding someone for expressing personal style contradicts everything we claim to stand for as a brand. Marcus has built an incredible following by being genuine, and that's exactly the kind of partnership we should be pursuing." The tension in that space was so thick I could barely breathe. Other guests were now openly recording this confrontation, and I realized that whatever happened next would probably end up on social media within minutes. Part of me wanted to tell Jamie to stop, to save herself from the professional suicide she seemed determined to commit on my behalf. But another part of me, the part that had been crushed and humiliated just moments before, felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Someone was fighting for me. Not just defending me, but actually articulating why I mattered, why my approach to fashion and content creation had value. She was saying things about my work that I'd never been able to express myself. Victoria's response was swift and brutal. "Jamie, you're clearly not ready for this industry if you think defending inappropriate attire is more important than maintaining brand standards. We'll be discussing your future with the company tomorrow morning, and I can assure you it won't be a pleasant conversation." The threat hung in the air like a storm cloud, and I watched Jamie's confident facade crack slightly. Her hands gripped that clipboard tighter, and for the first time since she'd spoken up, I saw fear flicker across her face. She was realizing, just as I was, that her moment of courage was going to cost her dearly. The crowd around us had grown larger, and I could feel the weight of all those eyes, all those phones recording. All those people who would go home tonight with a story about the intern who destroyed her career defending an inappropriately dressed influencer. The guilt was overwhelming. This woman had sacrificed her job for a stranger, and there was nothing I could do to undo it. But then something beautiful happened. Other voices started joining in, quietly at first, then with growing confidence. A fashion blogger I'd spoken with earlier stepped forward and said, "Actually, I think Jamie's right. Authenticity is what's missing from most brand partnerships these days." Another influencer nodded and added, "Marcus's content is more engaging than most of the sponsored posts I see from luxury brands." If you're watching this, and you've ever had someone stand up for you when you felt completely alone, you know how powerful that moment was. If this story is resonating with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support means everything to me, and I promise the ending of this story will surprise you. Also, drop a comment below and tell me about a time someone showed you unexpected kindness. I read every single comment and I love connecting with all of you. And please share this video with anyone who needs to hear that authenticity always wins in the end. The battle lines were drawn, and what happened next would change both Jamie's life and mine in ways neither of us could have imagined. The aftermath of Jamie's defense was like watching a slow-motion explosion. Victoria's face had transformed into something I'd never seen before. Pure, unadulterated rage mixed with the kind of corporate authority that could destroy careers with a single phone call. The crowd around us had swelled to at least 30 people, all holding their breath, waiting to see how this David and Goliath moment would resolve. "Jamie Chen," Victoria said, her voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level that somehow felt more threatening than her earlier shouting. "You have just made the biggest mistake of your professional life. Not only are you defending completely inappropriate behavior, but you're doing it in front of our most important guests and partners." I watched Jamie's face as the full weight of what she'd done began to sink in. Her hands were visibly shaking now, and I could see her swallowing hard, trying to maintain her composure. But what struck me most was that even as fear crept into her expression, she didn't take back a single word she'd said. She stood there, clipboard clutched against her chest like armor, facing down one of the most powerful people in luxury fashion. "Your employment with Lux Fashion House will be terminated first thing Monday morning," Victoria continued, her words carrying across the silent crowd like a death sentence. "And I'll make sure that every major brand in this city knows exactly why you were let go. Your career in fashion marketing is over before it even began." The cruelty of that threat hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about firing Jamie. Victoria was promising to blacklist her from the entire industry. I felt sick knowing that someone was facing professional destruction because they'd defended me, a stranger who couldn't even defend himself. But what happened next showed me something about Jamie's character that I'll never forget. Instead of breaking down or begging for forgiveness, she looked Victoria straight in the eye and said, If standing up for authenticity and treating people with basic respect costs me my career, then maybe this isn't the industry I want to be part of anyway. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see other guests looking uncomfortable, some nodding in quiet agreement with Jamie, others clearly wanting to distance themselves from the confrontation. A few of the influencers who had initially supported me were now backing away, probably realizing that association with this drama could hurt their own brand relationships. Victoria turned her attention back to me, her expression cold and dismissive. As for you, Marcus, I think it's clear that you're not the right fit for our brand or our events. Security will escort you out, and you can be certain that Luxe Fashion House will never work with you in any capacity. The humiliation was complete. Not only had I been publicly dressed down and rejected, but now I was being physically removed from the event. The security guard stepped forward, not aggressively, but with the clear intention of walking me to the door. I felt like I was in a nightmare, watching my career dreams crumble in real time while dozens of people recorded it for posterity. As we walked toward the exit, I could hear the conversations resuming behind us, the buzz of people processing what they'd just witnessed. Some voices sounded sympathetic, others dismissive, but all of them were talking about me, about my outfit, about the scene I'd supposedly caused. The content I'd planned to create from this event had transformed into something I could never post. A professional disaster that would probably follow me for years. But Jamie walked with us toward the exit, and that simple act of solidarity meant more to me than any brand partnership ever could. She didn't have to leave. Victoria hadn't asked her to go, but she chose to walk out with me rather than stay and try to salvage her position. You didn't have to do that, I told her as we reached the street outside. The cool evening air felt like a relief after the suffocating atmosphere inside, but the reality of what had just happened was starting to hit me. You didn't even know me, and now you've lost your job because of me. Jamie shrugged, and for the first time that evening she smiled. Some things are more important than a job, Marcus. Besides, any company that would fire someone for defending basic human decency probably isn't where I want to build my career anyway. We stood there on Fifth Avenue, two people whose careers had just imploded in spectacular fashion, and somehow I felt more hopeful than I had all evening. Jamie had shown me something I'd never experienced in the influencer world. Someone willing to sacrifice their own success to do what was right. I've been following your content for months, she admitted as we walked away from the flagship store. Your approach to fashion, the way you make style accessible to everyone, the authenticity you bring to every post, that's what real influence looks like. What happened in there just proved that you're everything this industry needs and everything it's afraid of. Her words hit me harder than Victoria's criticism had. Here was someone who understood what I was trying to build, who saw value in my work even when the fashion establishment rejected it. As devastating as that evening had been, Jamie's courage had shown me that there were people in this industry who valued authenticity over appearances. What I didn't know then was that this disaster would lead to the most incredible opportunity of my career, and that Jamie's act of courage would change both our lives in ways we never could have imagined. The weekend after the Luxe Fashion House disaster was the longest of my life. I spent Saturday and Sunday replaying every moment of that humiliation, wondering if I should just give up on influencer marketing entirely and go back to working full-time at the coffee shop. My phone had been buzzing non-stop with notifications, some supportive messages from followers who'd seen clips of the incident online, but also plenty of criticism from people saying I should have known better than to wear sneakers to a luxury event. I couldn't bring myself to post anything. How do you explain to your audience that your big break turned into a public humiliation? How do you maintain the confident, aspirational image that influencer marketing demands when you feel like a complete failure? I sat in my tiny apartment staring at my phone, drafting and deleting captions that never felt right. Jamie and I had exchanged numbers before parting ways that Friday night, but I hadn't heard from her all weekend. I kept wondering if she was regretting her decision to defend me, if the reality of losing her job had made her wish she'd stayed quiet. The guilt was eating me alive. This woman had sacrificed her career for a stranger, and I couldn't even figure out how to turn the experience into content. Then Tuesday morning came, and my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a warm male voice said, "Marcus, this is David Chen from Chen and Associates Marketing. I believe you met my daughter Jamie at the Luxe Fashion House event." My heart stopped. Jamie's father. I immediately assumed the worst. Maybe he was calling to blame me for his daughter's career being destroyed, or to ask me to somehow make things right with Victoria Sterling. I braced myself for another confrontation. Another person telling me I'd ruined everything. "I wanted to personally invite you to dinner this Friday evening," David continued. and his words were so unexpected that I thought I'd misheard him. Jamie told me what happened, and I'd like to discuss a potential collaboration. I think you'd be very interested in what we're working on. The relief and confusion hit me simultaneously. This wasn't an angry father calling to blame me. This was a business opportunity. But I was still processing the emotional whiplash when David explained who he was. Chen and Associates Marketing was one of the most respected agencies in New York, specializing in authentic influencer partnerships with brands that actually cared about values beyond just profit margins. Jamie was absolutely right about you, David said. And hearing those words from someone I'd never met but who clearly understood the industry made my chest tight with emotion. We've been following your content for months, and your approach to accessible fashion aligns perfectly with several of our clients' values. That incident at Lux just confirmed what we already knew. You're the real deal. I spent the rest of that week in a daze, trying to process this complete reversal of fortune. The restaurant David had chosen was a cozy Italian place in Little Italy. Nothing flashy or intimidating, just good food and warm atmosphere. When I arrived Friday evening, Jamie was already there, and seeing her smile when I walked in made me realize how much I'd been worrying about her. "How are you holding up?" I asked as we sat down, and her answer surprised me. "Honestly, I feel better than I have in months," she said. Working at Lux was slowly killing my soul. Every day was about maintaining this artificial image of exclusivity and superiority that I never believed in. Getting fired for defending authenticity was the best thing that could have happened to me. David arrived a few minutes later, and immediately I understood where Jamie got her confidence and integrity. He had this calm, assured presence that made you feel like you were talking to someone who genuinely cared about doing the right thing, not just making money. "Let me tell you about the brands we represent," David said as we ordered dinner. "These aren't companies looking for influencers to just post pretty pictures and drive sales. They want partners who understand that fashion should be accessible, sustainable, and representative of real people's lives." As he described the 3 brands they had in mind for me, I felt something I hadn't experienced since starting my influencer journey: genuine excitement about potential partnerships. One was a sustainable streetwear company started by 2 college friends who were frustrated with fast fashion. Another was a thrift flipping brand that taught people to transform secondhand finds into trendy pieces. The third was a size-inclusive activewear company founded by a former athlete who couldn't find clothes that fit her properly. "These brands don't want you to change who you are or what you represent," Jamie added. "They want to work with you because of your authenticity, not despite it." Sitting in that restaurant, listening to David and Jamie describe opportunities that aligned perfectly with everything I believed in, I felt tears threatening at the corners of my eyes. A week ago, I'd thought my career was over. Now I was being offered partnerships that could actually make a difference in people's lives while staying true to my values. But the best part wasn't even the business opportunity. It was realizing that Jamie's act of courage had led to something beautiful for both of us. Over dinner, David outlined opportunities that seemed almost too good to be true. The financial terms were better than anything I'd ever been offered. But more importantly, these partnerships would let me stay completely authentic to my brand and values. I wouldn't have to pretend to love products I didn't believe in or create content that felt forced and artificial. The sustainable streetwear company, called Thread Forward, was started by 2 friends named Alex and Sam, who'd met in college and bonded over their frustration with fast fashion's environmental impact. They'd been following my content since I had maybe 30,000 followers, drawn to my thrift flipping videos and my message that style doesn't require constantly buying new clothes. "They specifically requested you," David explained, pulling out his phone to show me some of their designs. "They said your vintage blazer video from 6 months ago perfectly captured what their brand represents, finding incredible pieces that tell a story and making them your own." Looking at their clothes, I felt that familiar excitement I got when I discovered a perfect thrift find. These weren't just sustainable alternatives to fast fashion. They were genuinely cool pieces that I would want to wear regardless of any partnership. The fact that they were ethically made and environmentally conscious was just an added bonus. The second brand, Remake Culture, was even more aligned with my content. Founded by a woman named Maria, who'd grown up in her grandmother's alterations shop, they created tutorials and sold supplies for transforming thrift store finds into trendy pieces. Their whole philosophy was about creativity, sustainability, and proving that the best fashion comes from personal expression rather than following trends. "Maria has been watching your thrift flipping content religiously," Jamie said, her eyes lighting up as she talked about the brand. "She said you have this natural instinct for seeing potential in pieces that other people would overlook. That's exactly what her brand is about. teaching people to see fashion as a creative medium rather than just consumption. But it was the third brand that really got to me emotionally. Strength in Every Size was founded by former Olympic track athlete Carmen Rodriguez after she retired and struggled to find activewear that fit her muscular build properly. She'd started the company to create clothes for women whose bodies didn't fit the narrow beauty standards that dominated the fitness industry. Carmen saw that video you posted about feeling confident in your own skin regardless of what you're wearing, David said. And I remembered that post clearly. It had been one of my most personal videos, talking about growing up feeling insecure about my height and build, and how fashion had helped me develop confidence. She said it made her cry because it captured exactly why she started her company. As David and Jamie described these partnerships, I felt something shifting inside me. For 3 years, I'd been chasing validation from brands that didn't really understand or value what I was trying to build. I'd been so focused on getting invited to exclusive events and working with luxury labels that I'd lost sight of why I started creating content in the first place. The best part, Jamie continued, is that these aren't just one-off sponsored posts. These brands want long-term partnerships where you'd have input on product development, campaign messaging, and brand direction. They want you to be a genuine collaborator, not just a pretty face posting their products. The emotional weight of that statement hit me hard. I'd spent so long feeling like I was on the outside looking in, begging for scraps of attention from brands that saw influencers as disposable marketing tools. Now I was being offered the chance to actually help shape brands that aligned with my values and could make a real difference in people's lives. There's something else, David said, his tone becoming more serious. These partnerships would be exclusive within their categories. That means no working with fast fashion brands, no promoting products you don't genuinely believe in, no compromising your message for a quick paycheck. Are you comfortable with that level of commitment? I didn't even have to think about it. Absolutely, I said, and I meant it completely. The idea of only working with brands that matched my values felt liberating rather than limiting. I was tired of turning down partnerships that felt wrong and constantly worrying about whether accepting certain deals would damage my credibility with my audience. Jamie leaned forward, her expression becoming more personal. Marcus, I need you to understand something. What happened at Lux wasn't just about defending your outfit. It was about defending everything that's right about this industry and everything that's wrong with it. You represent authenticity in a world that's obsessed with artificial perfection. Her words made my throat tight with emotion. I've been following your journey since you had maybe 20,000 followers, she continued. I've watched you stay true to your values even when it would have been easier to compromise. That's why these brands want to work with you. And that's why I knew I had to speak up that night. As we talked late into the evening, I realized that this dinner represented everything the Lux Fashion House event had failed to be. Here was genuine connection, mutual respect, and shared values. Instead of being judged for my authenticity, I was being celebrated for it. But David had one more surprise that would make this opportunity even more meaningful than I could have imagined. 6 months later, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. The partnerships with Thread Forward, Remake Culture, and Strength in Every Size had taken my career to heights I'd only dreamed of. But more importantly, they'd given me a sense of purpose I'd never felt before. My follower count had grown to over 400,000, but the real victory was in the engagement. My audience was more connected and loyal than ever because they could feel the authenticity in every collaboration. The sustainable streetwear campaign with Thread Forward had gone viral in the best possible way. Instead of just posting pretty pictures, I'd created a series showing the entire life cycle of their clothes. From the organic cotton farms, to the fair trade factories, to styling the pieces in real-world situations. My followers loved seeing behind the scenes, and Thread Forward saw their sales increase by 300% in the month following our campaign. But it was the work with Remake Culture that really touched my heart. Maria and I had developed a weekly series called Thrift Flip Fridays, where I'd take followers through the process of transforming secondhand finds into trendy pieces. The comment sections became these incredible communities where people shared their own transformations and supported each other's creativity. We weren't just selling products. We were building a movement around sustainable fashion and creative expression. Jamie had become not just my main point of contact but a genuine friend. She'd thrived at her father's agency, quickly earning a promotion to account manager, and developing a reputation for identifying authentic influencers who could create meaningful partnerships. Our professional relationship had evolved into something deeper. We understood each other's values and pushed each other to create content that actually mattered. Then came the email that made me laugh out loud. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was editing a video about styling vintage pieces for modern occasions when my phone buzzed with a notification from Luxe Fashion House. The subject line read, "Partnership Opportunity, Collaboration Inquiry." I screenshot it immediately and sent it to Jamie with a message that just said, "You're not going to believe this." Her response was a string of laughing emojis followed by, "Oh, this is rich." What did they say? The email was from their new marketing director. Victoria Sterling had been let go after several other public relations disasters throughout the year. The new team was trying to rebuild the brand's reputation and wanted to explore partnership opportunities with authentic voices in the fashion space. They specifically mentioned my unique perspective on accessible luxury and my impressive engagement rates with diverse audiences. I called Jamie immediately, and we spent 20 minutes laughing about the irony. "Should I respond?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "What does your gut tell you?" Jamie replied, and I realized that was exactly the right question. 6 months ago, I would have been desperate for any opportunity with a luxury brand. Now, I had partnerships that aligned with my values and an audience that trusted me because I'd never compromised my authenticity. "I'm going to politely decline," I said, and saying those words felt incredibly empowering. I'd rather work with brands that valued me from the beginning than ones that only noticed me after I became successful. The real victory wasn't in turning down Luxe Fashion House, it was in building something better. The brands I partnered with had seen incredible growth, and we'd created campaigns that actually helped people feel more confident in their own skin, regardless of their budget or body type. My content had evolved from just fashion tips to genuine conversations about self-acceptance, sustainability, and finding your authentic style. But the most meaningful part of this entire journey was watching Jamie flourish in her new role. She'd become one of the most sought-after talent managers in the city, known for her ability to identify influencers who could create genuine connections with audiences. Her courage that night at Luxe had led to a career that perfectly matched her values and talents. That humiliating evening had taught me that sometimes the worst experiences lead to the best opportunities. Jamie's willingness to speak up when it mattered had changed both our lives for the better, and it had shown me that authenticity always wins in the long run, even when it doesn't feel that way in the moment. Looking back now, I'm grateful for every part of that experience, even the humiliation. It forced me to examine what I really wanted from my career, and helped me find partners who valued the same things I did. Most importantly, it brought Jamie into my life, and her friendship has been worth more than any brand partnership could ever be. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to my channel for more behind-the-scenes content about the influencer industry. Hit that like button if you believe authenticity should always win over appearances, and share this video with anyone who needs to hear that being true to yourself is always the right choice. Drop a comment below and tell me about a time someone stood up for you when you needed it most. I love reading your stories and connecting with this incredible community we've built together. Remember, your worth isn't determined by what you wear or how much money you spend on clothes. Confidence, kindness, and authenticity will always be the most attractive accessories you can wear. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.